thanks to Withings for sponsoring this video. So remember when the Pixel 2 came out? For so many, it was the perfect phone. Stock Android worked like a dream. The cameras were way ahead of its time, and for a few years there, Pixel phones were romanticized as the gold standard. Until they just weren't anymore. However, now we're in this like golden age of smartphones, where if you kind of close your eyes and stick out your hand and pick out any phone, you're gonna hit a good one. You have to look hard to find any sort of bad phone. So I think it kind of begs the question, how does Google's newest offering stack up against other smartphones that I consider to be the current gold standard for iOS and Android, especially in that $700 to $800 price range? We've got the iPhone 12 and the Galaxy S21. And in this Versus, we're gonna find out if Google is still king or if the crown has been passed, and if at all, if it's worth buying it in 2021. So if there is like anything the Pixel line has been known for, good at, and crushing, it's obviously the camera. So let's throw up 3 photos. One's from the Pixel 5, one's from the iPhone 12, and the other one, probably guess, from the S21, and see if you can tell which is which in a blind test. So if you watched our recent video directly comparing the iPhone 12 versus S21, you will know those two cameras were insanely similar, and a lot of people, myself included, had a heck of a time figuring out which was which. Well, this one might prove to be even more difficult. So every photo looks so similar. The highlights are being treated the same, shadows aren't too crunchy, HDR to my eye look great. I think you'd be hard pressed to really find much fault in the photo department with any of these phones. So even night mode, I think something that the Pixel really helped kind of make famous and sort of get on more phones, is pretty similar for the most part now. Same with portrait mode. Every phone just, just knocks it out of the park. Portrait mode has gotten so incredible over the years. So put your guesses in the comments. It's reveal time, and feel free to pause this if you need to. But A was the iPhone 12, B was that Pixel 5, and C was Samsung's S21. And it is crazy to me that we have come this far, this fast with smartphone photography. Even just like a few years ago, there were ginormous differences between processing, color science, and photo quality of flagship smartphones. It was easy to look at a picture and be like, that's a Samsung, that's an Apple, that was taken by a Pixel or Nexus phone. And it was largely based off of which phone objectively took the better photo. It was clear which phones were best. But now we're getting into such like nuanced minor differences between phones, becoming more subjective and becoming more of a personal preference. And it almost doesn't matter the differences in cameras when it comes to purchasing a phone because they're all good. And what's kind of been fun is see like the super fans of all of these flagship phones really not have a leg to stand on anymore when it comes to superiority. So kind of to just drive the point home, like every modern smartphone right now, especially the flagship ones, are at the very worst some version of good. And if you didn't have to hold like another phone side by side to compare, you'd think whatever smartphone you were using at that time was the best in the world, because it pretty much is. Video though, on the other hand, is still a different story. And I think this is where Apple starts to flex its muscle and tends to jump out in front. And that like gap between what Apple was doing and what Android was doing used to be just like a Grand Canyon. But it has closed a lot over recent years, especially with the Snapdragon 888 and with the S21. Now it does, to my eye, still kind of crush the shadows too much. But other than that, it is now just kind of a hair behind the iPhone. So I don't know if it's a Qualcomm clap, if it's a Samsung clap, but whatever, video on Android has now gotten very good. The Pixel, however, has not taken that same jump that Samsung has, and it's certainly improved, and I want to give credit where it's due over the years with better stabilization, more frame rate options, especially in 4K. When we look at them side by side, it's pretty noticeable that the Pixel has a lot of catching up to do, even to catch up to the S21. But like I said, you'll only notice that unless you're looking at them side by side, and that's still true with video, each on their own. anyone would, I think, be generally pretty happy with in their hand. It just might not be the best when it comes to video. And they're still so good that it's hard to declare a winner because a ton of this is subjective performance, what's going to be better to your eye. But if I had to choose one, I would choose the S21, really for no other reason than the simple fact that it has what the other twos don't, a really good telephoto lens. All right, so screen, and admittedly, I have a lot of bias when it comes to screens. I'm a screen snob, there's no way around it. Something you hear me talk about a lot. It's your window into everything that your phone can do. And I know it's probably sound like a broken record, but refresh rate matters to me. And it is crazy that a modern flagship phone doesn't have at least some form of a higher refresh rate. I know I'm probably gonna die on that hill. I know a lot of you don't care, I see in the comments, but at least to me it matters, especially if I'm paying a premium price for a phone. I want premium features. It's like buying a $50,000 car, it doesn't come with Bluetooth. It is that level of weird to me when a modern flagship doesn't have like at least a 90 hertz or 120 hertz refresh rate. So, I mean, you probably guessed where I'm going with this, right? iPhone doesn't cut it, even though it's OLED this time. The only thing that saves Apple screens for me is their color calibration. I think it's the best of any smartphone, and it's been that way for a while. Pixel 5 though is no slouch in the screen department. It's got a lower 1080p resolution than the iPhone 12, but it does have that higher 90 hertz refresh rate, which obviously soft spot in my heart. It is also less. It starts at $699, $100 less than both the iPhone 12 and the S21, which is $799, and it still has higher refresh rate. Even though it's a lower resolution, at least to my eye, I didn't notice it didn't make much of a difference. I know there's a lot of you, while I am on the refresh hill, you are on the resolution hill, and I get it, but at least for me, I'm picking refresh rate over resolution. The S21, however, though, I think both of them, like, pats them on the head and says, good boys, puts them in their place. It's got a gorgeous 120 hertz display. It's no surprise. Samsung's displays are amazing. That's why most other phone manufacturers use displays made by Samsung. But it's 1080p, and again, it's a really good display. So good that I don't mind it, and I don't care about the resolution. But again, you might. To me though, it is so good at what it does with the higher refresh rate options that I will happily make the compromise when it comes to resolution to have the higher refresh rate and also better battery life. So when it comes to screen, it should be an obvious which one I'm going with. I'm going S21, I can't help it. I'm a fancy man when it comes to my screens, and I want the best screen I can get for my dollar. And out of these three phones, that is very clearly the S21. Like most people, the past year being stuck at home, I got a little softer in the middle than generally I like to be. In the past about 3 or 4 months, I've been trying to really get myself back on track, to be healthier again, to work out again. Key factor of sort of knowing my health and sort of hitting my goals has surprisingly been a scale. And the Body Plus Smart Scale from Withings has actually proved to be pretty invaluable in that whole process. In fact, it's actually the #1 best-selling smart scale in the US, and it does a lot more than just give you your weight. So it's going to monitor and analyze my full body composition. That includes things like BMI, total body fat, water percentage, plus muscle and bone mass. So like most smart things, it has an app. It's called the HealthMate app. It actually syncs your data over Wi-Fi, not just Bluetooth like a lot of other smart scales do. So you can easily monitor it 24/7 from your phone. So obviously pricing is super subject to change, but right now it's about $100 for the Body Plus scale. But if you hit the link down below, Withings is offering a 20% discount on Amazon from March 20th to April 4th. So if you hurry, you can get a pretty good deal on a piece of tech that I think's got a place in everyone's house. All right, so the design of the phone matters too, right? You're holding it's got to feel good and look good. And each three of these could not be any more different. In typical Pixel fashion, it feels more utilitarian. S21 is kind of a bold new design, and iPhone 12 is a bit more nostalgic, going back to the iPhone 4, iPhone 5 well. And I think each serves a purpose, and honestly, you're not gonna go wrong with any of them. They're all different and unique. Personally though, I'm kind of gravitating to the iPhone 12 design. Their callback to the older generation with the squared off edges. I don't know, maybe it just speaks to me, kind of a golden age of phones. I like how it feels in the hand. I like the flat edges. I like how it fits in cases. It's just a nice feeling phone. It is still weirdly light, and it's lighter than I prefer in a smartphone. I don't know, maybe I equate weight with premium. It just feels light. In fact, they all feel lighter than you expect them just by looking at them and hearing the specs. But if you ever held an iPhone 12, it's very jarring, at least to me, first time you actually held that thing in your hand. So the S21 and the Pixel 5 both have plastic backs though, with different finishes. Ultimately though, design and which is better, that one is going to come down to preference. But I'm gonna pick a winner, and for me, it's the iPhone 12 over the others. So performance is surprising relatively equal across the board, but there are some differences and nuances that you should know if you're considering any of these phones. So the iPhone 12, it's got the A14, 4 gigs of RAM. S21, it uses the beastly Snapdragon 888 with 8 gigs of RAM. And the Pixel 5 is going a bit downstream, but still powerful with a Snapdragon 765G with 8 gigs of RAM. And aside from like benchmarking differences between these three, you're not really gonna notice much of a difference in like things that you're going to do every day, the performance of those things between these three phones, which is a testament, I think, what the 765G can do. And it's plenty fast for the Pixel 5 for almost anything, multitasking, playing games, opening apps, all of those things are very fast. My concern is how fast it's going to be in a year from now, 18 months or 2 years. I think that is a valid concern, but if you're upgrading your phone every year and you're not worried about how it's gonna perform next year in 2022, then by all means, you will not notice any performance decrease, at least to my eye, whatsoever. So the next question is probably like, so if the 765G is so good, what's the benefit of forking over extra money for the more powerful, at least on paper, A14 and Snapdragon 888. You see those differences a lot in the photography, what the photo processing can actually do for those pictures. But again, because Google's software is so good, I think it helps bridge that gap a lot. Processing power though is going to serve you and give you more headroom as you get to sort of the 12 and 18 months if you keep your phones for a while longer. Obviously, these phones have to last for a whole day, and battery life is important. The S21 and Pixel 5 have nearly identical milliamp hours, with 4,000 and 4,080 respectively. iPhone 12, though, maybe why it feels so light, has a measly, minuscule, tiny baby battery of 2,815 milliamp hours. Even so, though, we're not seeing much of a difference in actual battery life, and I think that's the magic of the A14 at work, or maybe Apple knows better than I do, just because it's not driving a high refresh rate. But battery across each was pretty close to identical. If you're happy with how the Pixel 5 takes pictures and video, it's going to be a total toss-up based on performance, and that's a testament to what Google's done with their software and what Qualcomm's done with the 765G. So there's also other stuff, kind of intangible things. When a company releases their new smartphone, we all expect more and more features to be added. While all of these phones do have new features in their predecessors, they also lost some as well. Samsung perhaps the biggest. They lost the SD card slot, as well as the amazing MST feature for Samsung Pay. It kind of gave it that magnetic field. Both, I think, are head scratchers for fans of Samsung. Apple lost pretty significant milliamp hours on the battery from the iPhone 11, and the Pixel 5 weirdly lost astrophotography mode for their ultra wide angle lens only. A feature that I think was pretty popular on the Pixel and is now just on the regular wide angle main shooter. What's perhaps even more odd is that it was done in a software update. It wasn't even a hardware choice to remove it. Not used to seeing major features removed like that in a software update. So all phones will wireless charge to some version. iPhone 12 has MagSafe added, while the S21 and Pixel 5 offer reverse wireless charging. Both the S21 and Pixel 5 have not very reliable, but it is there, face detection as well as fingerprint readers, while the iPhone 12 still only uses FaceID, and I guess technically FaceID is more secure, but in a world where everybody's kind of wearing one of these, I think it's more practical having Touch ID or fingerprint reader on there. OS is obviously a huge factor too. It's the elephant in the room whenever we do comparison videos. On the Android side, even with the improvements Samsung has made with One UI, stock Android on the Pixel 5 is still fantastic, and still my preference when it comes to sort of pure OS experience. iOS feels like the other side of the same coin to stock Android. All are really good now. And of course, every one of these phones has 5G, both versions of it. I don't know if you care or not, but 5G is here and you can use it if you want. So we gotta pick a winner, and this is a tough one. If you watch other verses between the iPhone 12 and the S21, you know the S21 barely edged out the iPhone 12 for me. But going into this comparison, as a real fan of Pixel phones, I want to find the reasons to crown the Pixel 5 as kind of the mid-tier king, but I just couldn't. And gone are the days of the Pixel 2 era, and Samsung and Apple are now fighting for that same crown. I know it's sad, but maybe wistful to see, but I feel like Google has made the Pixel more of an afterthought as the years have gone by instead of sort of a primary product. Now, there's always rumors of big product improvements for the Pixel 6. Even a foldable Pixel has been rumored right now, and listen, I am rooting for Google. And I want to give credit where credit is due. I think you pushed smartphone cameras to the next level, and you did lower the price by $100, making Pixel 5 an incredible phone and value. But to be fair now, there are better things at that price point. You've got Google's own Pixel 4a, you've got the Samsung FE, iPhone mini. There's a lot of phones competing at those very crowded price waters. But putting these three phones on a table, I'm able to take OS preference out of it. I don't know if you are, and if you're not, then it's probably pretty clear which one you should pick. But if I have to grab one that's gonna give me the best experience, performance, photos, screen, build quality, for me right now, still the Samsung S21.